One thing is that people are addicted to stress. They're addicted to that adrenaline of feeling like they're on the go all of the time.
The more you can do this, letting yourself know what you're actually feeling, not what someone else or some other voices might be telling you you should feel, then the more you'll be able to dial into what that perfect place really is.
And that was a huge realization piece for me, that actually being on that treadmill all of the time isn't actually going to lead to the longest term success over the whole course of my life. So I'm not saying that everyone needs to turn around and quit their jobs and make drastic changes, but just having that awareness where you feel like maybe pushing myself all of the time isn't serving me in the same way that I thought it was.
Whether you want more innovation more easily, you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know that it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every single day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and creating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead today. And joining me today is Evie Brockwell. Evie grew her product career at Booking.com before transitioning to fractional product leadership and working with global companies like TUI and FreeNow. Whilst coaching and consulting, she realized that more than half of her clients were struggling with burnout, so she began researching the impacts of burnout in product. She found that this affects up to 92% of product people, so pretty much everyone, if we're just going to round up, and has since been on a mission to bring so much more of a human approach to her work. Welcome, Evie.
Thank you, and thank you for the intro.
The more we sit in our whole selves, the more energy we have to do all the other stuff, because we're not stretched so far out, which takes so much energy.
Yeah, I was literally having this conversation with someone today because I've just finished 4 weeks of burnout coaching with a bunch of product people. And one of the things that we were speaking about in that space was that you spend your day in back-to-back meetings or going from meetings to decision to this task that needs to be done. And you don't carve out time to do any of that thinking or to go and have that headspace for everything to settle. And if you do create that time, you feel guilty. And there's so many reasons that I could talk about in this space, but one thing is that people are addicted to stress. They're addicted to that adrenaline of feeling like they're on the go all of the time. So you have that element where you have to get comfortable slowing down. And then you have the other side of things where we feel like we have this external pressure where it's frowned upon or it doesn't make any sense or it's not productive. And only by practicing that and seeing the value that it adds can you change that narrative and counter that argument to know that actually this is way better for you.
Yes, and let's separate people who do really well, are happiest when they're going all the time, from everyone else. Because we're not saying you have to take 5-minute breaks every 10 minutes, or you have to be going turtle slow. If you are a sprinter who can sprint all day long and that's a happy place, that's what recharges you, then do that. Understand that you're doing that because it's how you work best, not because it's what some external pressure might require. And be sure to frame it that way so that you know you're doing that to take care of you, not because someone else is forcing you to.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it comes back to knowing yourself and knowing how you work best and what your full self, whole self is. And the more that you can dial that up, the better.
And the easy way to dial it up is just do a bunch of fixed movements. If you think you're a person who sprints all day long, that works great, then try breaking that up with some pauses. Take a day where, or even 5-minute block where you just go as slow as you possibly can. Take way more breaks or way more time where you're not going fast and see how you feel. And the more you can do this, letting yourself know what you're actually feeling, not what someone else or some other voices might be telling you you should feel, then the more you'll be able to dial into what that perfect place really is.
Yeah, and I also think that it can be circumstantial. So for example, I used to be the sprinter. And I still do enjoy sprinting from time to time, but maybe I'm just older now. But I found that those breaks are so helpful. And I didn't realize, like going back to the first point you made, until I started experimenting with this, I thought that like rest is for the weak and like these people are crazy. And now that I have more of that in my life, I want more of it. And I had this battle for a while where I was like, oh, well, that's a bad thing. Like I can't do what I used to be able to do, until I saw the positives and realized that actually in a lot of ways, this is complementary now, and I can sprint when I need to, when I choose to, when I desire to, but I can also bring in this other element of being slower and allow myself to rest when I need to. And as opposed to seeing these like opposites, sometimes it's like, these are all of the different flavors and you just need to know what to dial up for you and when as well.
That's a really deep awareness, Evie. What helped you work through that battle that you mentioned and understand what would lead you out of that and back into calm? And then what helps you stay there? For so many of us, it's so easy to get pulled back into those battles.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I've always had, not always, but I've had the awareness for quite a while. When I was in my early 20s, I remember having a conversation with my dad when I was like, when are you ever just satisfied? When do you know you can take your foot off the gas and just enjoy where you are in life? And he was like, oh, well, for me, it happened when my priorities changed when I had children. And I was like, okay. Left that thought, continued on with my life for a few years. And two major-ish life events happened for me. One was that I broke my hip when I was 26. The reason why I broke my hip was because I trained really hard. I was running my 7th marathon. I was going to the gym and running most days. And as much as everyone said to me, this is still a freak accident, your hip should never have broken, I think I was really pushing myself and burning the candle at every single end. And it was working for me. I was performing really well. I was getting promoted at work. I was going to break my PB in a half marathon until I pushed myself too far. And that was a huge realization piece for me, that actually being on that treadmill all of the time isn't actually going to lead to the longest term success over the whole course of my life. But I still kept pushing at work and I was still on this treadmill. And about a year later, I became burnt out. And I was like, oh, I still didn't learn my lesson from when I broke my hip. I still didn't learn to slow down then. Maybe the universe is really trying to tell me something here and I need to learn my lesson this time. So what I ended up doing was making a bunch of changes at work and overcoming things in that space. But about 9 months later, I left my job and took a break and started traveling the world. And I think I needed that. I think I needed to go from the extreme of being so far into my career to taking a complete step back to then be able to find the middle ground and what that balance looked like. So I'm not saying that everyone needs to turn around and quit their jobs and make drastic changes, but just having that awareness where you feel like actually like maybe pushing myself all of the time isn't serving me in the same way that I thought it was. And therefore, what could I start to change or experiment with to do something about that, I think can be really helpful. So yeah, the awareness came by some forced signs in my position and in my opinion. But the awareness to be able to see those and learn from those was also aided by things like having therapy. And I started different practices like making sure I journaled on a regular basis, and I'd started meditating and had these other activities in my life that helped me create that self-awareness. So sometimes even when things are staring you in the face, if you don't have the right tools to understand yourself and be able to reflect, you still might not learn from those. So I do recommend some practical things as well as not waiting till your hip breaks.